Nobody moved. The five figures remained on the distant hill. For several seconds, both groups simply watched one another. JJ was the first to speak. "They're definitely people." Harry nodded. "Looks like it." Ethan squinted. "I still can't make out their faces." Khan lifted his camera. He zoomed in carefully. 3 boys. A small adjustment. 2 girls. "At least we know we're not alone," Toby said quietly. Simon kept his eyes on the hill. "They've definitely seen us." Josh nodded. "I'd be surprised if they hadn't." JJ looked from the group to the distant figures. "So, nobody answered. What now?" Simon shrugged. "We go over." JJ raised an eyebrow. "That's the whole plan? You got a better one?" JJ thought for a moment. "No. Exactly." Harry smiled. The group started walking. The flowers brushed softly against their legs as they crossed the valley. Every now and then, one of the strange blue rabbit-like creatures hopped out of the grass before disappearing into another patch of flowers. For a while, the 5 figures didn't move. Then one of them stepped forward. The others followed. Ethan noticed first. "They're coming towards us." Simon smiled faintly. "That saves us half the walk." Slowly, the distance between the 2 groups disappeared. At first, they were only silhouettes, then individual people. Faces became clearer, expressions easier to read. Nobody looked frightened, just curious. Soon, only a few meters separated them. For a brief moment, nobody spoke. The boy standing at the front smiled. "Hey." Simon nodded. "Hi." The boy glanced between the 9 of them. "Didn't expect to run into anyone out here." Harry laughed softly. "Neither did we." Silence followed. Not an awkward silence. Just the brief pause that came when 2 groups of complete strangers unexpectedly met in the middle of nowhere. For a few seconds, neither side seemed quite sure what to say. Then the boy standing at the front smiled. "We should probably introduce ourselves." He rested a hand against his chest. "I'm Alex." He gestured towards the others. "Antonio, Max." The girl with the warm smile smiled. "Luna." The other girl gave a small nod. "Kathleen." After that, the sidemen introduced themselves as well. For a moment, the conversation felt a little less awkward. One of the girls looked over the group. "That's quite a big group." JJ looked around at everyone. "Now that you mention it." "Yeah." The girl smiled. "You all out hiking together?" Simon nodded. "That was the idea." JJ looked around at the endless valley. "I feel like we've gone a little off schedule." A couple of the strangers laughed. The conversation suddenly felt much less awkward. Harry scratched the back of his neck. "Can I ask something?" The boy nodded. "Sure." Harry pointed towards the distant hills. "Is there a town nearby?" Alex nodded. "There is. It's about an hour's walk from here." Luna smiled. "We're heading back there ourselves. We've been hiking for the last 3 days. I think we've seen enough mountains for a while." Antonio chuckled quietly. "And we're running low on supplies." "So," Alex looked back at the group. "Perfect timing, I guess." Harry let out a small sigh of relief. "Good. At least there are people nearby." Alex studied the 9 of them for a moment. "You all seem a little—" He searched for the right word. "Confused." Simon laughed awkwardly. "That's one way to put it." Alex tilted his head. "Are you lost?" The sidemen exchanged glances. Finally, Simon nodded. "Yeah. A bit." Alex folded his arms. "Do you have a map?" "No." "Any idea where you're trying to go?" Harry answered before anyone else could. "Could you point us towards King's Cross?" The 5 looked at one another. Max frowned slightly. "King's Cross?" Harry nodded. "Yeah. It's in London." Silence. Luna blinked. Nobody in the sidemen group answered immediately. Harry laughed once, expecting a joke. "Very funny." The 5 simply looked at him. "I'm serious. I've never heard of London." Harry's smile slowly disappeared. Simon looked at Josh. Josh looked just as confused. "It's the capital of England," Simon said. Kathleen tilted her head. "England?" Ethan frowned. "You've seriously never heard of England?" The 5 slowly shook their heads. "No." JJ looked around at everyone. "Okay. That's weird." What about Europe? Antonio thought for a few seconds, then shook his head. Sorry, never heard of it. The silence stretched between both groups. Eventually, Alex let out a small breath. Well, I don't think we're going to figure this out, standing in the middle of a field. Antonio nodded. The town about an hour from here. Someone there might recognize the places you're talking about. Kathleen looked unconvinced. Or, they'll be just as confused as we are. Only one way to find out, Harry replied. Alex smiled. Then come with us. Simon glanced around at the others. Nobody objected. Lead the way. The two groups set off together. For the first few minutes, the conversation was light. Harry asked Luna about the blue rabbit-like creatures. Vic was more interested in the strange trees scattered across the hills. Toby quietly asked Max how often people came hiking through the valley. Quite a lot, Max replied. It's one of the quieter routes. James and Con continued filming almost everything they saw. Every now and then, Antonio glanced curiously at the cameras before looking away again. The valleys slowly disappeared behind them. Rolling hills gave way to woodland paths and gentle streams. After a while, Luna slowed her pace slightly. Can I ask something? Simon looked over. When you said London, you weren't joking, were you? Simon shook his head. No, we weren't. Luna looked at Alex. Alex didn't answer. Instead, Antonio spoke. Doesn't this remind you of something? Kathleen frowned. What? Antonio hesitated. For the first time in a while, he seemed interested in the conversation. You mean? Antonio nodded slowly. Luna gave a small laugh. Oh, come on. You don't actually believe that. Antonio shrugged. But, he glanced towards the sidemen. It's strangely similar, Harry frowned. Similar to what? Antonio was quiet for a few seconds. Then he answered. A bedtime story. About people who came from beyond the barrier. Harry frowned. Beyond the barrier? Antonio nodded slowly. It's an old bedtime story. Luna smiled faintly. My grandmother used to tell it whenever I wandered too far from home. Kathleen rolled her eyes. Every grandparent has their own version. JJ looked interested. So, what's the story? Antonio was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. They say that a very long time ago, strange people appeared beyond the barrier. Nobody knew where they came from. They claimed they came from another land. Some stories say they looked just like us. Others say they only pretended to. They could deceive people. They were violent. They brought disasters wherever they went. They lured travelers away. And if someone crossed the barrier, they were never seen again. Silence settled over the group. Then Luna spoke. It's only a story. Every region has something like it. Parents tell it to stop children from wandering too far. Harry looked between them. So, where's this barrier supposed to be? Luna raised her arm and pointed behind the sidemen. There's an old place called Grethamiciaro, about 2 hours that way. We're told never to go anywhere near it. Simon slowly turned towards the direction she was pointing. It was the direction they had come from. Josh looked at her. That's where we came from. Nobody laughed. Luna blinked. What? Simon nodded. We walked through there, and we crossed a forest with golden trees. For the first time since meeting them, the 5 strangers looked genuinely unsettled. Antonio stared at the group. The golden forest? Josh nodded. Yeah, it stretched for miles. Kathleen frowned. Nobody goes there. Harry looked confused. Then why isn't it closed off? Alex answered before anyone else could. Because it doesn't have to be. Everyone knows not to go. We grow up hearing the stories. Our parents did too. So did theirs. It's simply a place people stay away from. Alex nodded. It isn't the only one either. There are places all over the country that people avoid. Old ruins, forgotten forests, abandoned valleys. Most of them have stories attached to them. Luna smiled faintly. My grandmother used to say every region has at least one place you're never supposed to visit. Harry chuckled. Sounds familiar. We've got places like that too. JJ looked at him. Like what? Area 51, for one. Harry shrugged. People have all sorts of theories about it. But if you actually tried getting in, you'd probably meet a lot of security before you found any aliens. A few of the strangers exchanged confused looks. Security? Alex asked. Harry nodded. People guarding the place. Alex looked surprised. You actually need guards? Of course, Harry frowned. Don't you? Alex slowly shook his head. No, there'd be no point. Antonio looked towards the distant hills behind them. People here don't go near those places. They're taught not to from the time they're children. Kathleen folded her arms. And the few who ignore the warnings? She paused. Well, the stories never end happily. Toby finally spoke. Has anyone actually gone? The five fell quiet. Max answered first. There are always stories. Someone who wandered too far. A hunter who never returned. A traveler who simply disappeared. Luna gave a small shrug. Whether they're true, I don't know. But nobody wants to find out. The wind swept gently across the valley. Almost instinctively, everyone glanced back towards the direction the Sidemen had come from. For the first time, the path behind them felt far more unsettling than the one ahead. The conversation slowly faded after that. Nobody seemed quite sure what to say anymore. The two groups continued along the winding path in silence. Nearly an hour passed before Alex finally slowed to a stop. We're here. The Sidemen stepped onto the crest of the hill, and then everyone froze. Not a single word was spoken. Because spread out beneath them was unlike anything they had ever imagined. Every pair of eyes widened. Every thought disappeared. The town below looked as though it had been pulled straight from a dream. None of them could find the words. Not Ethan, not Toby, not even JJ. They simply stood there, unable to believe what they were seeing, and for the first time since leaving the station, the reality of where they had arrived finally began to sink in.